Gentlemen, good morning. We're going to start. Thank you for coming this morning. It's a bit cold in and hopefully not too rainy with cats and dogs. My son said this morning it's going to rain horses and whales, so let's not horses and whales. We're going to have Rachel Jansen in the race this morning. She's going to do on systematic literature review. And yes, we're looking forward to her presentation. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really thrilled to be here this morning, as I only recently started my research journey as well. So I think I can feel a lot of the things that you're experiencing. And it's always good to know about the different tools that are available for you to use in your research. And I think the systematic literature review is right up there, and will be to great advantage to you no matter what field of knowledge you're looking into. Okay, the topic of my talk is the semantics and intricacies of the semantic literature review. I want to just quickly, before we carry on, just tell you that I'm from USB. So that's the Stellenbosch University Business College, Business School, I mean. And I'm very thrilled to have some of my colleagues there from the library. And it's really nice to see all of you. Okay, so let's get started. This morning we're going to look at the following topics: what it is, the semantic literature review, why we want to use it. We're going to look at the characteristics of the systematic literature review. We're going to look at the features of it. Then we're going to carry on onto the components of the review protocol, which is very important when you're doing a systematic literature review. And we're going to look at the steps in conducting a systematic literature review. After that, we will be looking at some useful tools, which is always good to be aware of. And then advantages of a systematic literature review. And finally, I will be taking some questions, if you have any from the floor. Okay, what it is, a literature review, in general speaking now, not the systematic one specifically. Reviews is the foundation of most research, or you can also say it's the backbone of the research. And it can be defined as objective, a thorough summary, and critical analysis of the relevant available literature on the specific topic that you might be studying. Okay, why do we want to specifically make use of a systematic literature review? The systematic literature review make use of explicit systematic methods and are pre-selected and helps to minimize bias at the end of the day. And therefore, it also leads to more reliable findings from which conclusions can be drawn and decisions made. Okay, why use the systematic literature review? First of all, the systematic literature review is more exhaustive, and it lends itself to a more thorough exploration of what is available in the literature. In any particular field of knowledge. So it don't matter what field of knowledge you're interested in, it actually goes there. Because of these qualities, it can be considered to be more fair and also have greater scientific value. And I think in any field of research, that is very important. It needs to be academic rigorous. And some fields, you go through case studies and stuff, and you need that academic rigor to actually come through into your systematic literature review. Oh, sorry, I think I've skipped this one. Okay, now we're coming to the characteristics of the systematic literature review. It can be dubbed a systematic literature review when it's based on a clearly formulated question. It identifies all relevant studies at that time that you're conducting the study. It goes about appraising the quality. And finally, you summarize the evidence by use of explicit methodology. Okay, in summary, a systematic review is a means of identifying, evaluating, and interpreting the available research that are relevant to a particular research question, first of all, in your subject area, and also it might just be looking at the phenomenon of interest that you are studying. It is definitely an unbiased way of looking at the literature. It's methodical, transparent, and can be replicated. And I think in research that is such an important point to remember. You want your research to be able to be reused. Okay, apologies. Individual studies contributing to a systematic literature review are called primary studies. And the systematic literature review, once you've conducted it, is actually considered to be a secondary study, okay, because you're looking at the primary studies. It is important to include primary studies of academic quality. How do you determine whether they have academic quality? Mostly peer-reviewed journal articles or even peer-reviewed conference proceedings. Those are the things to look at first, but those are not the only resources that you can use. Okay, a systematic review uncovers connections among empirical findings and can potentially uncover important practical implications. Okay, when conducting a systematic literature review, statistical methods of meta-analysis may be used, but it's not always the case. You might not want to use them. Okay, this one is quite important to look at. I just want to show you that bit at the top where the different patterns are all your primary studies. Okay, that part. It might not be different types of studies, but it's all your primary studies. And you're going to determine through that use of the SIFT, and the SIFT represents the inclusion and exclusion criteria that you are going to determine in your study. Okay, once you've done that, you're going to only get the studies that you want to include in your systematic review. And then we're going to look at some of the steps later on, how you're going to do that. Okay. I just want to quickly just go back one step. We spoke about meta-analysis in the previous slide, you remember? Okay, what is meta-analysis? It's a form of a systematic review that can be used in qualitative research specifically. Findings from various studies on the same subject are analyzed by means of standardized statistical procedures. It assimilates findings from many quantitative studies to bring greater clarity and understanding to the research field you're busy conducting your research in. It is used to draw conclusions and detect common themes and relationships, which is very important. Okay, then there's also metasynthesis. This is a non-statistical technique. It's used to incorporate, evaluate, and interpret findings on an array of qualitative research studies. And qualitative research studies are often used in social sciences. Identifies common core elements and themes. It may use findings from phenomenological, grounded theory, or ethnographical studies. And it involves analyzing and synthesizing key elements that you are detecting in the literature that you're working with. Okay, the goal is to transform individual findings into new conceptualizations and interpretations. Okay, what are the features of the systematic literature review? Okay, from here on I'm just going to move a little bit slow because there's quite a bit of information that you need to take in. And if you should feel that I'm going a bit fast, just put up your hands, okay? Okay, the features of the systematic literature review are as follows. It defines review protocol and methods used. So you start by defining the review protocol. That's your first step, which identify the research questions that needs to be answered and predefining the methods that will be used to perform the review. A systematic literature review is based on defined search strategy that aims to detect as much of the relevant literature as possible. Basically, when you're done with your study, you want to, at that point of time that you're done with your study, you want to have included everything about your topic. The search strategy is documented so that readers can access its rigor and then the completeness and repeatability of the process. Because it's all about having your literature being reused and the data being reused. Explicit inclusion and exclusion criteria are required to assess each potential primary study. And those are like that little sift that I showed you. They act to sort out what's going to be let through and what is going to be excluded. It specifies the information to be obtained from each primary study, including the quality criteria by which to evaluate each primary study. Okay, the review protocol. What is a protocol? A protocol is the plan or set of steps to be followed in a study. A protocol for a systematic review should describe the rationale for the review, the objectives, and the methods that will be used to locate, to select, and critically appraise the studies that you are getting, and to collect and analyze the data from the included studies. Okay, the components for the review protocol are as follows. First, we're going to look at the background. It defines the rationale for the study or the survey, and it will include the research questions that the review intends to answer. I want to quickly just stop here. How does the library help us? Before we even come to this review protocol, you can actually go to your faculty librarian. I have some cards available here, but they're also available on the ground, on the floor there. At those desks where the computers are, you can get some there from your specific faculty. What's important here is even before you start your literature review, there are databases with different literature reviews from different fields of knowledge that can be accessed. I would actually suggest to start there, to get those literature reviews, read through them, see if they're actually addressing common themes or common phenomenon of interest to you, and maybe it will help you to actually formulate your research question at the end of the day. And the library is a very, very good place to actually start this, and your faculty librarian specifically. Okay. The next one is the search strategy. Okay, there it is. That will be used to search for primary studies, including search terms and resources to be searched. Then we're going to look at the selection criteria. Okay, are used to determine what studies are included and what studies are excluded from your literature review. You need to ask yourself at this point of time, am I going to include empirical works, or am I going to include theoretical works, conceptual frameworks, and models? And that will be determined by the type of study you're doing and the type of discipline that you are operating within. Okay, your data extraction strategy clarifies how the information required will be obtained from each, I'm going ahead of my slides, apologies. Okay, we're there by the data extraction strategy. It clarifies how the information required will be obtained from each primary study. When there is a need to make assumptions from the data, it is important to predetermine and stipulate a proper validation process. Okay, after this, you're going to synthesize the extracted data. So you're going to make an amalgamation of the extracted data. You're going to put it all together. When defining this synthesis strategy, make sure that it clarifies whether or not a formal meta-analysis is intended at this stage. And if so, what techniques will be used? Then obviously you're also going to think of your dissemination strategy. How are you going to get the knowledge out there? How will other researchers be able to find your knowledge that you created? And also a review schedule that is set out. It's basically setting up your project timetable. Okay, steps in conducting your systematic literature review now follows. We've missed the slide. Different documents on the subject of systematic literature reviews identifies divergent amount of steps, but most include the following important steps. And like I mentioned earlier, before your problem formation step, you're going to go and first find other systematic reviews on the same topic. Go through those, make sure you see what they did, and that will assist you in actually formulating your problem or finishing your problem formation step. Okay, once you have completed your problem formation, you can conduct a thorough search. And this is very important. You need to thoroughly search the literature and systematically go through what you found. You're going to collect the data and identify relevant material from the data that you have collected. You're going to appraise the quality of the data that you found, and you're going to summarize the evidence and interpret the findings at the end of the day from what you have found. Okay, next up is the steps in conducting a systematic literature review. I'm just going to go into deeper detail about the different steps now, starting with step 1, which is the problem formation step. Okay, when formulating your problem, it should not be open to interpretation. It should be very explicitly stated. And nobody should wonder what your question is about. It should be a well thought out question. And if you did do the systematic review searches, I think it will give you a very good guideline to make sure that this is a well-formulated problem. And at the end of the day, that is what guides your research. It connects at various levels with what you find and what you're ultimately actually putting into the market. This is important as it will help to define who your population will be, what the design of your study will be, and whether there needs to be any interventions. And it determines what your likely outcomes might also be. Okay, so this step, I can't stress enough how important the problem formation step is, and that it's well clarified and very clear, even to your reader, what it's about. And the Campbell collaboration or sample framework may be used to guide the test, to test your research question. Is it specific? Yes.
So can I ask a very elementary question, maybe? I just want to understand what exactly is a systematic review? Is it a type of research on its own, or is it are you taking us through how to do a good literature study just in general for any type of study? Or, just get a little bit of insight on what we are doing at the moment.
Okay, it is actually, I'm showing you the different steps. You'll see we'll come up to the review protocol and all of that in a moment or two. But I'm taking you through the steps. And just remember, a systematic literature review is very systematic, very methodical. It needs to in my slides that's coming up, I will answer some of that, but it needs to be very rigorous and it needs to be very well stated and explicitly said. So if you don't mind, can we carry on? I think some of those questions will be answered shortly. Okay, the Camel collaboration or sample framework, is it specific, your research problem that you formulated? Is it answerable? Is it measurable? Is it practical? And is it logical? And is it empirical? Therefore, can it answer be attained using observable evidence or actually experimentation? Okay, data collection. This is step number 2. At this point, the selection criteria should be set out clearly and should be informed by the review protocol. Your motivation for inclusion or exclusion of studies that you are looking at needs to be recorded at this point of time. Searches should be very extensive. You should really try to find everything on the subject matter that you can. And multiple resources should be consulted at this time. You don't want to just go into one resource type. You need to really consult multiple resources. Okay, we carry on with the data collection step. And I'm talking now about some methods of identifying potentially relevant studies. You're going to extend your search to include multiple bibliographical databases. And please remember to also check when you come across studies that are of specific interest to your research question, to actually go through these citations and do a forward citation search and see if you can't find more information on that specific topic. Don't forget to give conference proceedings a quick glance, obviously. And in specific areas, that is very important, like the economic and business environment. It's very good to look at the conference proceedings because they're continually having proceedings that's coming out and being printed. And also remember to make sure that it's accredited. Scan through journals of interest, relevant to your specific research interest, and then also contact your scholars. Obviously, you're in an environment where you obviously know the people of interest and of knowledge in your particular field. Contact them. I'm sure they will also be able to assist you. As a last point of reference, also search the internet and specifically focus on Google Scholar first, as you will find more relevant studies there. Okay, data collection continued. Now we're actually formulating our search strategy. When searching, remember, be methodical in your search approach to ascertain that you identify and collect all pertinent publications relevant to your research theme. This can also include grey literature, which is defined as literature produced on the level of governments, academics, business and industry, including both print and electronic formats, but not controlled by commercial publishers. So it's everything outside of commercial publishing. This type of literature can often not be found by searching bibliographical databases. They will not be included there. But you can find them on governmental websites, industry blogs, and consultation of industry experts. Okay, data collection continued. Record your search process. That's very important. You have to be explicit about that. And keep track of what you find, including the time frame within which you found it. So make clear notes for yourself. In a systematic review, it's important to keep track of and explicitly describe your search process, as other researchers will want to look into that. Your methods of identifying and collecting material, as well as your techniques of evaluation and synthesis of findings, should be clearly stipulated at this point. This is to allow other researchers to evaluate, critique, and replicate your search procedures. Publication should be arranged by type, which is journal articles, books, dictionaries, conference proceedings, and source, databases, blogs, and websites, for instance. You can make use of an indexing or summary system that should capture the following important information. Obviously, you want to know who the author was, the title, what the purpose of that specific study was. You want to record that. Methodology. You want to look at the findings and outcomes and keep track of that. And you also obviously want to keep track of the full source, where you found the document or the article, and give a full reference. And relate your own comments or key thoughts on each publication. Step 3, the data evaluation, critical appraisal. This is quite an important step in the systematically review process. The critical appraisal is a systematic process used to identify the strengths and weaknesses of each research article or document. This type of assessment is often used to make judgments about the usefulness and inclusion of the results in clinical practice. You can begin by examining the citations to determine relevance and making sure to meet the criteria for the synthesis. Ask yourself at this point, is the methodology appropriate for that type of study that you're looking at? Is the subject within the defined scope of the study? If relevant, then examine the document itself. Watch for references to other studies not identified by your own database searches or your other grey literature searches. Unpublished conference papers, reports of research conducted under grant, and information about current research at other institutions. You can look at all of that, but you need to please record it. Other important factors that forms part of the critical appraisal process is the significance of the research question, the suitability of statistical analysis in the studies that you are looking at, the validity of their conclusions, and obviously the recognition of potential conflicts of interest. Okay, data evaluation continued. Critical appraisal tools that you might use. There are various critical appraisal tools available that differ in accordance with the type of publication that is being accessed. Sorry, no, I didn't put that in the slide. AMSTAR, AM-STAR, for appraisal of systematic reviews. Then there's GRADE, like in grade class, for appraisal of primary studies. Cohort and case control studies and diagnostic studies for the appraisal of observational studies. And then you can look at the grade 2 for the appraisal of clinical practical guidelines. And AGREE stands for Appraisal of Guidelines, Research and Evaluation. These tools are essentially design-based checklists or guidelines to assess study quality. So you're going to use them as you're assessing the quality of your studies. Okay, number 4 and 5, our final steps in conducting a systematic literature review is to summarize the evidence that you come across and also interpret the findings. When structuring your systematic review, you should include obviously an introduction, a main body, and a conclusion. The introduction should include the purpose and brief overview of the problem and give an outline of the literature sources and your search strategy. So here you're now talking about your problem. Okay. Comment on what was found in the literature given, the reader insight into the breadth and the depth of the literature source, and facilitating judgment of the validity of the claims being made. In the main body of your literature review, you should include present and discuss the findings from the literature, critically review methodologies of empirical research, and remain objective under all circumstances. That is very important because that also helps with bias. Your reader should know that the reviewer has understood and synthesized the relevant information rather than just describing what other authors have found. The review should read like a critical evaluation of the information available on your topic and highlight and comparing information from key sources that you have actually accessed. The conclusion, a concise summary of the findings describing current knowledge and offering a rationale for conducting future research. Okay, there are various tools to assist you in your systematic literature review. One of the very handy ones is Mendeley, which is actually a reference manager. I'm sure many of you know about it. But it has quite very good functions, specifically geared towards the systematic literature review. One of them are the tagging function, wherein there is a tag that you can actually, when you're in your documents that you've downloaded or PDF that you've actually drawn into Mendeley, and in that tag you can actually then say why you've included it in your study and why you excluded it. So it's a very good place to actually keep record of your inclusion-exclusion criteria. It also has a bookmark function. That's very nice. That if you have a vast array of literature that you're going through, while you're reading, it actually stops where you stopped reading. So the next time you open Mendeley again, it will go directly to that document and a place in the document where you stop. So it really has a lot of time-saving functions. Let me see what else that I want to say here. When you were working through a vast array of documents, that's very, very important. Okay, I have a video that I want to quickly just play for you.
Making sense of a large research library can be hard work, but it doesn't have to be. Mendeley is a free reference manager and social network that helps you organize your research, collaborate with others online, and discover new research. Drag and drop your papers into Mendeley Desktop, and will automatically extract all the relevant information. Title, journal, authors, keywords, and much more, so you can organize them in a way that suits your workflow, and track them down when you need them. Securely sync your papers between multiple computers and mobile devices, so you can read, write, and annotate on the go. Install our plugins for Microsoft Word and generate citations and bibliographies with a few clicks of your mouse. Create private groups to securely share papers and notes with colleagues, or join public groups to follow topics of interest and connect to researchers around the world. Search our database on Mendeley Web and we'll tell you what's popular, what's related, and what's trending. We even provide you with personalized recommendations for what to read next, based on the content in your library. Sign up and download Mendeley for free. Together, we can change the way research is done.
Okay, that's a very, very handy tool, so please remember using that. And it also obviously helps you with your citations and things like that, and your bibliographic references at the end of the day. Seems to have gotten stuck now. Let's try here. Okay. There are also other tools that's very handy when you're conducting a systematic literature review, and those are systematic review software. I've put the names up for you so that you can maybe take them down if you want to. The Stiller SR, that one is software designed to give a better review experience, faster project completion, and transparent audit-ready results. That's important, remember, because you're wanting to be very explicit in what you did and how you conducted a review. Then we get Review Manager, or RefMan. It's software used for preparing and maintaining Cochrane reviews specifically. Then we get Abstractor Beta. that is software for abstract screening of systematic reviews. You will need to create a free account to access that. Then you get SDRD, which is systematic review data. It's powerful and easy to use for the extraction and management of data for specific systematic reviews and specifically meta-analysis. It is also an open and searchable archive of systematic reviews and their data. You will need to create a free account for this one as well. So those two are specifically, they're free. All of these tools both have strengths and weaknesses, and they might be costly, either in monetary or time constraints. The Stiller, for instance, is actually a very, very useful tool, but it's extremely expensive to use. Whereas Abstractor and SRDR, they're newer tools, so they might still have some kinks to sort out. But go and look at them when you're conducting your systematic literature reviews. And just keep in mind, when you're doing so, that you have to keep in mind that some of them might work well and some of them might not work so well. Okay, to finish off, what are the advantages of a systematic literature review? And I just want to quickly just show you again. We're back at the funnel. Now we're only looking at the studies that you are actually using, that you're actually going to use in your systematic literature review. And because we want it to be an academic rigorous format, we end up with something that's reusable in academic terms, which is important for all researchers, especially at a university. Okay, so what are the advantages? It is a good method to repackage professional research into a more academic rigorous format. It can be applied to both social and scientific research. Although often it was, I think, more often used in scientific research, but it can be applied also to social research. For instance, case studies. If you're working through a lot of case studies, it helps you to actually determine common themes, and then you can reuse the information. Your research can then, like I say, be reused, and the systematic reviews are usually peer-reviewed at various stages of the process. And therefore, it's very academic rigorous. And it can really stand the test of time. At this point, I want to just give you like a quick idea of what a systematic review is when you think of it. It's like a good skeletal structure with no bones broken or anything like that. It must stand on its own 2 feet. When you finish conducting your study and when you finish with your systematic literature review, it should be able to be firm, it should be able to withstand questions from other academics, and it should be able to be rigorous. Okay, that concludes my information about the systematic literature review. I hope it was of use to you, and you're welcome to ask me questions if you would want to.
For it to be academically rigorous, the paradox of research in our environment is that there's often non-accessible research that you just cannot access. So I question how rigorous research reviews can be when there are items that our university is not allowed to use. One would obviously want to document that according to this process. What are your views on that? Articles, journals that we, Oxford University, pay for. Ask the librarian, can I get a copy? Sorry, we don't have it. Just, it's a paradox, doesn't make sense.
Yeah. The question is, sorry, they're recording. The question is, how well can you say it's rigorous if some of the documents out there you can't access? I think at Stellenbosch University we really are in a position that we have access to most of the big and most important databases. And I think maybe to also answer your question, if there is information out there that you just can't lay your hands out on them easily, like doing a database search, for instance, I think that's where networking is very important. I think it's good to attend conferences, to meet up with the people on the fields, especially with those that are in high academic standing. I think it's important to if you can't do that, to at least connect with the local network, and maybe they can reconnect you to more international acclaimed researchers in your field. I think that's one of the main things that I could think of to do, is to really make sure that you have a good network and that you constantly expanding your network, that you don't stick to a small group but rather expand outwards. Does that answer you? Okay. Any other questions?
Sorry, can I ask another one?
Yes.
Integrating this into a thesis from your experience, do you have examples? There's a lengthy process. Is it integrated as an addendum? Is it integrated as a click here for more information to see all the process notes of how you've done your research? It's not common practice to have all this extra detail integrated into a PhD.
I can't really answer that very clearly. Integrating it into your research, that's the question. And then basically, normally he says she wouldn't include all the information in your thesis, for instance. I guess you can use it as an addendum, and then maybe in the literature review, the specific case studies, or whatever you want to mention, that you feel doesn't really belong within the literature review, within a thesis, I think you can add that as addendum items, and then make reference to them. Does that answer the question? Okay. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Okay. I'll just put some references up there for you. And then remember, it's all about attaining your object, and that is to actually to graduate. And to graduate and know that what you've put out there is again something that somebody else can use. That another researcher can come along and actually the information that you've put out into the world is of such a standard that other researchers would want to cite it. And then we start thinking of actually getting yourself into H indexes and things like that. And I think the systematic literature review can help you with that. Okay, and that concludes our session. Thank you very much for your time. And I hope I've answered your questions and given you some guidelines.